I would like to read 15 names for Patreons.
Oh,
if you'll
right.
give me just a minute. I sent you that list.
Yes, you did. I was not sure if that was random or if that was actually for today.
I added absolutely no context to it whatsoever, so I understand why you're confused. Yes, those are the Patreons we have gotten since the last time we thanked them. And as we try and do every 2 to 3 months, well, as we should do more often, I do like to reach out and thank the new folks who are supporting us.
Go really, really, really fast.
Really fast. George Benkanomi. No, trust me, I'm not that good at names. It wouldn't go that smooth. But yes, I will go ahead and read these. George. Thank you, George. Ben Can No B, which I think is a fantastic name.
K-N-O-W, no.
Exactly. And yeah, Ben Can No B. Marcelo Kunzler, Chip Smith, Adam, Tom Kennedy, DK Moon, Dragon Reader, Natasha Imlay, Frosted Angel in the Sky, Isican Akarli. Isican Akarli. That is spelled AysecanAkarli. So please let me know how that is pronounced. Tom Bessie, Jack O the Shadow, Jack Zeroth the Shadow. Megween, thank you, Megween, and
Marina Israelovich.
I like it.
That's a cool sounding name.
That is a really cool sounding name.
So yeah, thank you to all of those people. Some of those names I recognize and some I don't, but you're all lovely.
So I really appreciate all the support and everyone who's been helping us out. We called out for some help, and some of you stepped up and really made a big difference. So thank you so much.
Keep it coming.
This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast.
Okay, brain, come on, do the thing.
I'm kickstarting it with a little bit of cider. I was just like, you know what? Got to think about other things. Life's been a little nutso lately.
See, I've been doing my darndest to not with the head changes, and I'm achieving sobriety, and it's a struggle, and it's not good for this kind of creativity. Like, I need to change gears real quick and get into a creative headspace. Just slap myself around a little bit.
Be a tough adjustment.
Feeling the feelings. It's disgusting.
Well, Gus, help us break into this thing. Tell me a little bit about your podcast.
Our podcast, yeah. Our podcast called Wheel Takes. It is a podcast that we started, myself and my fiance, Allie, started about a year and a half ago, I would say. We started kind of poking around at it and really got into it in earnest, as you might expect, when we found ourselves locked in our homes for months on end. But in the same vein as, your wheel weaves or your wheel reads, I've read everything. She has not. I'm walking her through it. That's about it.
Well, where are you guys at now?
We're currently on, we've read through, I want to say, chapter 34 of book 5. So she's at the point where Brigitte has just been pulled from the dream world, and it's going to take me a little while for my headspace to get used to being able to say things. Because all I've been doing the past year and a half has been being cagey and being very, very apprehensive about what I am and am not allowed to say. But I can say whatever the heck I want here when I'm talking about the books.
There's some real freedom in having full spoilers, and we enjoy every minute of it because we get to say things like, Brigitte's gonna get killed and come back and save folks, and like that's something you could never talk about when she comes up in that situation.
She kept joking about jumping in the door, and I said, "You don't even kid." It's very much you will hear something whether you want to or not, and you don't.
Right? Yeah. The fine art of leading the first timers along and like encouraging their thought processes, but like not confirming or denying anything is really fun. I enjoy being in your guys' server and assisting in the chaos.
It's a pleasure to have you there. It's a pleasure to do.
I mean, essentially, you get to practice being an Aes Sedai by giving non-answer answers without lying.
It's really fun. It's fun because I can say things that everyone would say that's not true. That's not a spoiler. And I go out of my way to do that. I'll tell her things that I know that by all rights should be considered to be lies, but it makes sense to me the way I'm saying it. Drives her nuts.
There's an awful lot of opinions that you can bring out into this as well and say, like, well, there's certainly one perspective on that, is this way or that way or anything like that. Yeah, I've actually stayed out of your server simply because I don't trust myself not to spoil things.
I have definitely had to rapidly delete messages that had spoilers in them. Like, oh god, no, don't say that. Like,
to be fair, I have to.
Yeah, but like, I'm gonna say, like, Allie's predictions are my favorite part of your podcast because the stuff she gets right is so frightening. And it's like, how do I not respond in a way that confirms this?
Yeah, it's people occasionally reach out to me. They go like, "This is bullshit, right? You're lying about this whole thing. It's all an act." I go like, "No, sorry. She's just a writer. She's looking for what Jordan's doing with plot structure." Of course, then again, she also goes until the end of book 3 thinking Gareth Bryn is a Sammael. So, yeah.
But like
6 of one, half dozen of the other.
The first time that Tom and Moraine are on screen, she's like, "Well, they're gonna hook up." Nobody in the entire fandom has ever said that.
Yeah, I was irritated with that one. I was irritated when she walked up to me and said, "I think that Lord Luke and Esam are the same I think Lord Luke and Slayer are the same person, and I think Slayer is Esam, and I think there's something to do with the dream world." And I said, "How the fuck? What? How did you get there?
Why would you think that?"
Interesting.
At the same time, we do this and go, look at all the foreshadowing.
That's
so,
true.
Part of me isn't that surprised that, like, someone who's going meticulously through chapter by chapter and making notes and discussing it and, like, nailing down each plot point before they move on to the next one doesn't discover some of those things. I mean, she is reading it in a way that so few people ever read this kind of story, which is, most of us are like, okay, I accept what I'm given and move on, and I'll figure it out later. Mm-hmm. You don't have that luxury.
No, close reading is a different thing. It's a little more insane, I guess, but we have fun with it.
And then you can't, like, blaze forward and just, like, move through a chapter and then another chapter and then another chapter, right? Like, you're stopping and thinking, which I feel like it's so easy when you get sucked in to just be like, whatever about that detail. But if you have to sit down and, like, not read more, like, you're gonna think about what you just read.
And you're gonna go back. I mean, she'll grab the book and start reviewing stuff because she's like, I miss the folks. I miss Rand. I miss Egwene. I want to know what they're gonna be up to. I want to figure it out. So, yeah, a lot of fun.
I feel like it almost kind of duplicates the experience of waiting for the books to come out.
Yeah.
In a way that, like, we were able to get to a certain point in the story, and then we had to just ruminate and process and speculate until the next book came out. And so there is not exactly the same because you're doing it chapter by chapter rather than book by book, but there is sort of that same, like, okay, we've all arrived at this point, let's speculate about what we know up to this point.
It's like a weekly show release, for example.
Well, I say we should ready to dig into the chapter itself.
Yes, let's do it.
This is chapter 15, Insects, and our symbol is the 4-leaf clover snake.
Darkfriends all the way.
Darkfriends, right. Darkfriends, Forsaken. I mean, this is nothing but.
This is the heavy hitter.
General malevolence.
Yeah.
We really cover all the bases of badness here.
Yeah, everyone from, like, the little peons all the way up through, like, the big bads.
And we even get some, like, very precise information about the structure of the Darkfriend society and how it's built. So, yeah. This is, like, the most Darkfriend-y Darkfriend chapter ever. Like, this is where, like, we get more information about the Darkfriends and the Forsaken. This is such a juicy chapter when it came out. I was so happy with it and to read it.
Rereading it in preparation for this, it fascinated me really how it practically stands on its own. Mm-hmm. It could. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's got its own little self-contained story. It's got its own little self-contained descriptions, and it's got its own little kind of hierarchical metaphors. It's a beautiful piece of prose. I think he has a handful of these chapters, in my opinion, where his prosaic skill shines through, and I didn't realize it the first time, but yeah. Looking at it a second time, it's a good one.
And I think those are often his shorter chapters, where he, like, cut it down to just what he really wanted to say.
Yeah, brevity can really focus storytelling quite a bit as a brevity inclined writer. Not that I write creatively, but anytime I write anything, it's like, wow, I need an editor, help. That's why the episode description are always so long.
Carridin did not look up immediately from the letter he was writing when Lady Skane, as she called herself, was shown in. 3 ants struggled futilely in the wet ink, trapped. Everything else might be dying, but ants and cockroaches and every sort of vermin seemed to thrive. Carefully, he pressed the blotter down. He was not about to begin again for a few ants. A failure to send this report, or a report of failure, might doom him as surely as those mired insects. Yet it was fear of a different failure that tightened his guts. He had no worry of Cheyenne reading what he wrote. It was in a cipher known only to 2 men besides himself. So many bands of Dragonsworn at work, each stiffened by a corps of his most trusted men. So many more who might be bandits, or even truly sworn to that filth, Althor. Pedro Nile might not like that last, but his command had been to plunge Altera and Murandy into blood and chaos, from which only Nile and the Children of the Light could rescue them. A madness clearly to be laid at the feet of this so-called Dragon Reborn. And that he had done. Fear held both countries by the throat. Tales that the witches marched across the same country were an added reward. Tarvalon witches and Dragonsworn, Aes Sedai carrying off young women and setting up false dragons, villages in flames, and men nailed to the doors of their barns. It was all one in half the street rumors. Now, Nile would be pleased and send more orders. How he expected Carridin to snatch Elaine Tricand out of the Terrason Palace was beyond reason. Another ant skittered across the ivory-laid table onto the page, and his thumb stabbed down, destroying it, and smeared a word to illegibility. The entire report would need to be redone. He wanted a drink very badly. There was brandy in the crystal flask on the table by the door, but he did not want the woman to see him drinking. Suppressing a sigh, he shoved the letter aside and pulled a kerchief from his sleeve to wipe his hand. So, Cheyenne, do you finally have progress to report? Have you just come for more money?
This is picking up pretty much exactly where the last chapter left off. This is a conversation happening as Matt is standing and talking to Noel outside. Like, this is like the moments are happening together. The last chapter and the beginning of this chapter are like the same point in time.
Because we followed Lady Cheyenne to this house, and so this is the beginning of the conversation she's having while Matt is at the same time having a conversation with Noel outside.
Yeah.
Which we then see.
Yes. So this cipher, is that the cipher that Niall's all like freaking out that these 2 people know each other? Right in the scene when he gets killed and he's like, Phasar and this other guy shouldn't know each other and blah, blah, blah. So Carridin is sending those messages.
As far as I can tell, there's only 3 people that know this cipher. Pedro Nile, Carridin, and this spy guy who's in Falma.
But Carridin's not supposed to be on that list, right?
No, I think he is. He's sending that cipher to Pedro Nile. He's sending a report back to Pedro Nile. That's who I think he's reporting to.
See, I thought that he stepped into the role of one of the people who were supposed to know the cipher because something Darkfriends.
Interesting.
I just assumed that Niall didn't trust Carridin with this, but I could be wrong.
Because we see Niall say the same thing. There's only 2 other people who know the cipher, and we see that one of them is his spy.
Oh yeah, I guess we never get the other one named.
But we never get the other one. And it would make sense that he would teach his number 1 enforcer that he sends out to write reports in his cipher.
It's interesting because I feel like throughout this chapter we get the double headspace, the double think of Jaichim Carridin, where he seems loyal to the White Cloaks simultaneously to being loyal to the Darkfriends. In that same vein, I am more inclined to think that the 3 we're describing are the 3 that Pedro Nile believes it to be.
So who would the third be then? Just a different spy?
Well, I mean, we do have a lot of those trails that are unfollowed, right? An agent on the ground, someone who is inconspicuous, someone who can get places to get information without being fled from.
Noel?
I mean, he's worked for people without knowing it before.
That's true, yeah. He's been compelled to help.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Noel is the third. I can see that.
Can't. I can see Carridin knowing the cipher before Noel. But no, way to make me doubt my assumption that I've had for the past, several reads. Just like I always assumed Carridin had somehow gotten in there and was sending information he shouldn't have had. Maybe he should have.
Well, if Carridin says only 2 other people know it, and Niall says only 2 other people know it, if Carridin didn't know, if Niall didn't know that Carridin knew it, then Carridin would say 3 other people know it.
Right.
So they have to be. They're almost definitely referring to the same people, unless Niall is keeping secret from everyone else. One of those people.
Like, I mean, logically, it makes sense. He is literally thinking about how he has to write a report, and if he writes the wrong thing, he's in trouble. Who would he write the report to in that cipher?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, probably not one of the Forsaken.
Yeah.
They come to him in his dreams. You know, like, he's writing a report back to the White Tower. Back to the White Cloaks, which is Pedro Niall, in the cipher that only Pedro Niall knows. And he has no idea that Pedro Niall has been assassinated at this point. That information hasn't gotten to him yet.
Mm.
It's true.
And he describes fear of a different failure being what he's concerned about, which, you know, dark friendery failure, probably much worse than White Cloak failure.
I mean, he's torn, right? Both places, both of them are going to kill him if he fucks up, and they want different things. So
yeah, Niall got a little heavy-handed there, and it's like, I will kill you, and Carridin's like, literally, you're the second person to say that.
Yeah, and he's literally in a damned if he does, damned if he doesn't situation.
Yeah, and it's really messed up too because the Darkfriends are like, "We'll kill your whole family first," and Niall's just like, "I'll kill you." So Carridin, of course, is like, "Let me choose the option where my whole family gets killed first." That's a good idea. It's really awful.
That's Carridin.
Yes, it is very Carridin. This is why nobody is sad when he gets drowned in brandy.
Jaichim, I am not a coward, Carridin.
So true.
I love the analog of the insects stuck in ink.
Oh, it's beautiful.
It's just that, I think when you're referring to the quality writing here, that is, I think, the linchpin of it, is the analogy between the Darkfriends and the ants.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the constancy of it. And the, you know, Vermin is thriving. Yes, it is. Here we are, Jacob Carridin. Yes, you are.
Yes, you are.
And, well, Shiane, more than him, is thriving, I would say. But,
yeah.
all the same.
And they all refer to themselves as insects when trying to abase themselves to their higher-ups. They're like, I'm an insect, I'm a worm, blah, blah, blah. So it's like, I wonder where that analogy came from.
And we see him talking about all the dragon sworn. We were just thinking about that in the last chapter where we saw some destroyed, well, not in the last chapter, but the last scene where we were like, oh, these dragon sworn destroyed and killed a bunch of people in a very gruesome way. Why would they do that? Mm-hmm. And I think this is basically saying, those aren't dragon sworn, those are White Cloaks. And this is what I think I talked about that in that episode, and I was like, this is what it's based on, is Jaichim Carridin thinking this. Yeah,
and there's also, I think, like, rumors of what the Shan-Chan are doing swirling through this, right? Aes Sedai carrying off young women is the Shan-Chan. Setting up false dragons is the rumors that the Saladar Aes Sedai are putting out. Like, the whole thing is just a mess.
It's a mess of rumors and fading to myth and various other things like that are coming to his ears. And
for the purposes of the Darkfriends, it doesn't matter what is truth, right? As long as there's chaos and nobody knows what they're doing, it's fine. The Lord of Chaos is ruling really effectively right now.
Especially in this part of the world.
Yeah.
Well, and the rest of it, but I'd say especially in this part.
We get a little history about Mili Skane. This is sort of her backstory, which...
It's a good story.
It's a good story.
I love her, man. I love her so much. She might be my favorite dark friend.
You know, and she makes it out unscathed as far as we can tell. Status is alive at the end of the series. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. She's fine.
No, she escapes.
She's a very effective dark friend. She's the best assassin, like, to be had. She got into it, like, entirely on her own, became good at it at a really young age, and just slips away into the shadows like a cockroach, I guess. Just a reminder that Mili Skane was the one who tried to kill Matt and Rand in the barn. You know,
I love it so much.
Just, like, having that continuity, like those two dark friends who chased them down when they were on their own because they could sense the corruption of the dagger, right? And remember, they have to be really dark friends to sense that corruption, and we see that she was an assassin and evil and very much working for the Darkfriends. And then the other one, of course, is Petar, who we just saw hung by the White Cloaks, by Jaichim Carridin.
Right, yeah.
I think it's a fun coincidence. Both Darkfriends that attack the boys are both involved with Jaichim Carridin. One killed by, the other kills.
Wow. That's some nice synchronicity, actually.
To zoom out a little bit back to the ants metaphor, I appreciate also that these are ants that are smearing blackness across a page.
Totally.
We're looking at that metaphor. They're spreading They're literally spreading darkness across a white fabric, a white cloth. Go ahead.
I like that.
Yeah, no, and he talks about how they're as dead as the ants smeared in the ink, and it's like, yes, you're also caught in the corruption, the blackness, it's reached out and entrapped you and brought you down. definitely.
Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
think twice before you, sell your soul to the devil next time.
So I looked up Mili Skane's age, whatever you want to call her. She's only 22, and she went over when she was 15
Mm-hmm.
when she got turned down. She's put in work in those 7 years.
Yeah, she's killed how many people?
20?
Like 20 people.
Yeah.
It's like 3 people a year. Like that's like for every season there's a murder. Turn.
Well, she had 2 to kill to get her identity. Right, to become the Lady Cheyenne, she had to go kill the real Lady Cheyenne and her aging father. So that was just 2, easy right there, She only had 1 more to do for that year.
I also love the fact that, a death count of 20 is considered amazing. At this point, I think all of our main Emmonsfield boys have killed more people than that.
Probably our
Far
whole,
more.
top 10 named cast has killed
I'm like,
more than
ugh. It's like
all
20,
of the good people.
You gotta get those numbers up, Mili Skane. Those are rookie numbers. I'm sorry.
Right.
Well, I think it is important to point out the difference between a combat kill, right? And then nobody saw me, nobody knew I was there. Oh no, the Lord is dead.
Right.
True.
Right?
And a Tom kill.
And oh my god, a Tom kill.
And she's
Yes.
working without the power, right? That's a huge part of her story, is that she became a dark friend out of spite for not being able to become an Eyes to Die. So she definitely does not have the power to work with. She is doing that with subterfuge and skill. Not that the power isn't a skill, but skill with stabby stabs. Yeah, so it's a quick summary of her life. She was poor, she tried to become magic, she became evil instead. That's her story. It's kind of inspirational in a really dark way.
Kind of inspirational in a way.
Bootstraps.
Yes, she
She's
pulled herself up with
bootstraps.
someone else's bootstraps.
After strangling them with her.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And she's also not just an assassin, but she's a hunter who can find anyone or anything, right? She's really a lot like Tom, honestly. If Tom was 50 years younger and evil.
And focused on the murder part instead of the singing part.
Yeah, intelligence gathering's less so.
He may have been 50 years ago. It's entirely possible. He was a little more focused on the murder part of his he's very good with those knives. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, he's well practiced.
Yes.
Knives and probably other tools.
And I also noticed that no rank matters among those who serve the Great Lord. I'm like, are we saying that classes are a good thing? Or is this a classless societies are the devil? Is this non-binary energy is evil? What are you saying here, Jordan? Only the bad guys know how to set aside rank and work together for a common goal?
Well, the Eyes to Die set aside rank too. But it's power rank.
They create a new rank and put themselves above everyone.
We have a new rank here, though, right? We just don't know what it is yet.
Okay, fair. Okay, yeah, so I said to do that. Yeah.
There's definitely, I would argue, the class system here is more ingrained and more rigorous because it's very much you're dead now because you didn't do what I wanted you to. We just have no idea what the actual structure is.
That's fair.
I would say it's upward mobility is certainly possible. Downward mobility happens, but you only go down about a head or so at a time.
I was gonna say 6 feet, but
yeah. There's only one way to go down. You basically climb or you die, which is so ironic that everyone is like, "I'm in it for the immortality," and it's like,
yeah. If you
They're
want to
not
live
thoughtful.
forever,
yeah.
maybe don't do that.
Yeah, they're not thoughtful people, Darkfriends. Well, they can become thoughtful people, but it's a rash decision.
Yeah,
I
it's
have
very
to think.
short-sighted.
Yeah.
Hey, life's gonna be great, but that burning for all eternity by being tortured by the Dark One feels a little short-sighted. 5 minutes of profit for a long-term global warming pandemic or something like that. Yeah.
But what if you're the one person who's really good at it? That's the thing. That's all the Darkfriends, right? They say well, everybody else has failed. Everybody else has failed. Not me though. I'm going to be the next Forsaken. I'm going to be the next Sammael.
Maybe that's the true unifying trait of Darkfriends. It's not selfishness like Varen thought. It's thinking that you can do better than all
It's
the
hubris,
other Darkfriends
right?
who have failed. Yes.
Hubris,
Yeah.
Temporarily embarrassed Forsaken. That's basically all.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're much closer to a dead worm underfoot than you are to being a Forsaken. But sure, keep telling yourself that it's just one lucky breakaway.
Far closer to Pater than you are to Sammael.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
sure.
and that's something I think Boris starts to realize in this chapter.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And he is a very it really makes sense that this be a character that happens to, because he's so concerned with superficial things, with his appearance, with his material possessions, with his position, with who's groveling to him, with who he's groveling to. He's very focused on these things.
The quality of his brandy.
Yeah, and there's like looking at this in this nice mirror and being like, "Oh yes, look at me, I'm all big and strong and dangerous." And it's like you're focused on the wrong qualities, my friend.
The trappings of power are more important than power itself for him.
Like, take a leaf out of Mogedian's book and just hide in the shadows and stab people.
Or Mili Skane's
Or
book.
Mili Skane's book. And literally she gets elevated to killing him. That's her reward for being effective at her job rather than worrying about how it looks.
I want to know more about this beggar guy.
Old Cully.
Old Cully, yeah. I know we encounter him a couple more times, as I recall. But
I really want to say that he's in the scene when Matt gets jumped by a swarm of beggars and they try to...
I think so.
Gotcha.
Because I remember Matt conks an old gnarled guy on the head, and I was like, was that? And then he just scuttles off.
Yeah, that's always been my thought, is like, it seems like old Cully was there to oversee that operation and either gets concussed or killed or walks away from it. But that, yeah, I don't think we get any confirmation of that.
So, according to Encyclopedia Watt, Old Cully has Spar and other Darkfriends masquerading as beggars to attack Matt in chapter 29.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, there's a line in there, Old Cully won't like this.
Yeah.
Right.
They're failing to get
okay.
him. Yeah. And I always wondered if he was there, like, supervising or not, but...
I imagine that has a lot to do with the orders here, where Carridin says to Mili Skane, set your circle on trying to find Matt. That's why Old Cully is after Matt in that scene and sends his beggars after him.
Makes sense.
Well, Old Cully is above Mili in the hierarchy.
Here's the thing. It's a big enough deal that the Forsaken requested it be done, right? So if Old Cully catches wind that Mili Skane is doing a favor for Sammy and he can knock it out first, I feel like he probably would, right?
Although that is a lie, right? Sammy is like, don't bother. We'll deal with that later. So the fact that Boris is like, we're going after Matt, that's a lie that it's from Sammy.
Right.
Because it's from Ishi.
It's the implanted thing, from Ishi.
Yeah.
But I do wonder whether he had any ability to not pass that command on after all of the visions he has.
That's a good question. I never thought that there may be some compulsion in that, and that's why he pursues Matt over the Forsaken in his face, telling him not to do it.
Oh yeah, it has to be compulsion. That weave is too complicated to not include compulsion.
It's very Winter Soldier-y, in a way, to make a Marvel reference, because it's visions, conversation. I don't remember that thing that happened just now, but hey, you should do it anyway, even though I'm told not to. To me, it feels like it was a command of some sort that he can't help but do.
But for now, he thinks that he's driving people to find the cache of Terangrial. That's what he's called Mili here to talk about, is like, why are you spending money on horse races instead of bringing me magic shiny things?
And that's really, the point of all the Ebou Dar stuff, right? Our girls are tracking the Bowl of the Winds.
Yeah, everyone is an Ebou Dar for this cache.
But everyone's an Ebou Dar for the cache, wherever it happens to be. 6 stories or 5.
Yeah, no, it's very important because there's rumors and legends about this warehouse that somehow nobody knows where it is, which seems really like, what? But
You lost the key.
Yeah.
There's a line where Mili Skane debates interrogating the wise women with the red belts and is like, nah, they're not going to know anything. And it's like, that's exactly what you should have,
That much. You missed it by this much. You were so close.
And I think there's even a scene, well, I know that there's a scene later where a wise woman dies from the Black Aja sisters torturing her, and I can't remember why they're torturing her. I want to say it's after the Bowl of the Winds gets recovered, so it's...
I think so, too.
So it can't be for that, but it's like, like, the odds of the Bowl of the Winds being found by the Darkfriends one way or another is so high. Like, our guys get it by the skin of their teeth.
We never find out what happens to all the stuff they left behind. Because they take a bunch of stuff, but only what they can carry, and it's a whole room full of things.
They take several pack animals worth of panniers worth of stuff. Remember, because there's that scene where Elena's like sorting out like all the detritus. So they get a lot, but yeah, you'd think that like...
They didn't empty the room.
And also when they go there and the golem is killing everybody, well, trying to kill everybody, the people leave with armloads of stuff. It's again, sheer luck that they didn't grab the bowl in that moment. So yeah, what are the odds of them not going back and looking for more in that room? Pretty low. So, but I guess that kind of can explain like where the dream spike came from and other like Angreal that the Darkfriends have. Like there's a lot of just random, they've got level up power ups on the dark side that happen without any explanation. That's probably mostly this room.
That would make sense, that like the Darkfriends went back and were able to raid it after our folks did, because they only got, because, well, you know, you do have to contend with the Shan-Chan. Other than Simrog, I think the Forsaken pretty much avoid the Shan-Chan. Well, I guess by inverting your weaves, you can hide from them pretty effectively.
Yeah, but they do seem very focused on what will happen in this part of the world. There's only 2 Forsaken that don't focus on this continent, right? Because Demon Dread goes off to Shara.
Mm-hmm. And Simrog.
And then Sammael goes to Shan-Chan. Like, everyone else is like, no, we're going to the central continent, like where Dragon Mount is, where Tarvalin is. Like, that's where the action's at.
Oh, something you just said, this is a loose connection, but it reminds me of a line that we just saw in those first 2 paragraphs that I want to draw attention to before we get too far away from them. Do you mind?
Go for it.
Yeah, go for it.
It's curious that Carridin thinks of him as the so-called Dragon Reborn.
I think that's a White Cloak prejudice.
A White Cloak prejudice? Okay.
Yeah.
Probably.
I'll buy that. I mean, that makes sense to me. It stood out to me at first because I go, well, the Forsaken are saying they're calling him straight up.
Are you doubting the Forsaken?
Like, what are we going with here? All right.
Yeah, so, because in the same way that, like, yes, Aes Sedai of the Black are black, but they're also of their Aja.
Mm-hmm. And
I think Carridin is a dark friend, but he is also of the White Cloaks. And, like, he never is going to be... just like Pedro Nile believes that Rand is a false dragon and won't admit he's actually the dragon. I think there's a certain amount of White Cloak prejudice against admitting that the end times really are here, that you really do have to deal with the savior figure, and that you're not just causing chaos so that you can take over and be powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Niall's like, oh yeah, Tarmogoyden's coming, but the dragon is a myth. Like,
that part's all fake.
Like,
it's just going to be me and some Trollocs. We're going to have a good time.
I've got some sympathy for that. I do kind of think that with global warming, the end of the world is coming, but I don't believe Jesus is coming back.
Sure.
Fair.
So there's a little bit of like, yes, the apocalypse is coming. We see Trollocs, we see, Dreadlords, we see bad things happening, but there's no savior. We got to save ourselves.
I totally understand where he's coming from in a real world perspective. I think in a world where there's basically demonstrable evidence of divine intervention, it's a little harder for me to get behind. But yeah, I mean, if we put this in any other world where there were a polytheistic world where there was more than one faith, particularly, I would be like, yeah, this guy makes perfect sense. It's just he's one of the few people we see who fully discards the idea of the Carethan cycle, the dragon mythos, the whole thing. He's like, no, that part's bullshit. But last battle is going to happen.
Yeah, I would say one of the only people who dismisses that, who has access to information. Like, I mean, a lot of common folks are like, whatever, they don't know what's going on. But, like, he is well-educated, he's got a network of spies, he knows everything that's going on, and has reliable reports and alters them to fit his world perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the White Cloaks are the only people who do deny the divine intervention in as much as they say the one power is evil to be touched, and if you interact with it, then it's very wrong. Like, if there's anyone who's an atheist in this world, it would be the White Cloaks, even if they do realize that they're putting on blinders. Like,
ironically.
Yeah.
Fanatical, and yet the most atheist groups in
the Zealots are the atheists. That makes total sense.
Good work, Jordan. That's fun. That's actually really interesting.
That's that Tropin version.
What do you think of it? Yeah.
We get some reinforcement here that Mili Skane has been, we just saw her at the racing tracks. Like, she's spending all this money that Carridin's giving her on gambling and pretty things for herself. Like, she's nouveau rich. Like, she just doesn't really know how to she's getting a bunch of money she's not used to having, and she's sort of wasting it, as far as I can tell.
Race a roof.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah, she's like, I'll just have my minions go do the hard work. I'm going to go, like, live high on the hog. It's fine. And there's a huge, long paragraph of literally nothing but scene setting. Because she's complaining in his ear and he's worried and he's just looking out the window being like, people are trash.
It reminds me a little bit of Egyanin, when she's trying to find the Soldom and giving out coin, only, like, Egyanin does it right.
Right, yeah, because Egyanin's actually a decent person under it all. Plus, she's, like, working within the confines of her society rather than just going it alone as an assassin, which helps. But yeah, it's very similar. Like, how do you ask questions about objects of the power when you aren't a channeler, and that would draw unwanted attention?
Yeah, at least Nynaeve and Elaine have some idea of they're looking for a particular house in a particular area with, they don't have to ask about weapons of the power, they're asking about a particular home.
Mm-hmm.
So they have definitely a lead.
For sure.
Yeah, this was an interesting paragraph here where it's just Carridin looking at the people of the city and just being really judgy and harsh about, like, everyone's thieving, everyone's stealing, everyone's treating each other like crap. It's I think this paragraph is a case study in how Jordan writes POVs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then this whole, like, thing about, like, mobs. Oh yeah, it'd be really easy to whip up a mob, and mobs get out of control, and, like, maybe some of my people will be killed, but, like, we'd kill a lot of really shitty people too, so it might be worth it. It's just like, ew. Yes, let's go start a mob. Let's take our city back. That never gets out of hand.
It's certainly never. There haven't been bad mobs in this series so far. We haven't actively watched that happen.
And again, this is where I have to bring it back to the real world parallel, but the riot on the Capitol, right? Outlanders were always the first target, always immigrants, right? Outlanders are immigrants, right?
Mm-hmm. Women who peddled in herbs and cures, witch hunt.
And then turning that around and saying properly guided, you can turn that around on the palace, turning it around on the Capitol building.
Mm-hmm.
Like, taking the immigrant fear and having people then attack the Capitol, like...
Fear is a powerful motivator, and if you're able to whip it into a frenzy,
and people
I feel like we've seen that parallel here in the real world in a way that's just a little too on the nose for modern for recent events,
certainly.
And I mean, people think different once a mob gets going. Like, mob mentality is not just a phrase; it's a thing. It's a real thing, and it's scary.
Strength in numbers. You don't want to go against the group, right? Well, this is us right now. I shouldn't un-us. I don't want to other myself, to use a phrase.
Right. And then to get back to the real world a little bit, like, with the insurrection, there's so much discussion about the people who came planning to participate in an insurrection and the people who just got caught up in the moment. You just need a seed and a group. And the seed will infect the group really easily. And, like, yes, they are guilty of choosing to do that, but also, like, this is hijacking some deep how we are social creatures, like brain architecture, and how socialization works for social animals.
And that's why what Carridin is doing, which is implanting and embedding ununiformed white cloaks among the populace to create Dragonsworn and riots, is such a powerful thing.
Yeah, he doesn't need much to get a really big effect if you scatter those seeds effectively. And I mean, the world is in tension, right? So people are ready for that. Uncertainty that has been sown for years primes people for these sorts of moments.
He sees Matt, and we
Boom!
get a really cool, compelled vision.
I have so many things to say about it. It's such good writing. It's a really good Jordan passage.
I'm going to read this paragraph, actually.
Do it!
Please do.
Carridin recognized the young man. Suddenly he felt as though a knotted rope had been fastened around his head and was being drawn ever tighter. For an instant, a face hidden behind a red mask filled his vision. Night-dark eyes stared at him, and then were endless caverns of flame. And still staring. Within his head, the world exploded in fire, cascading images that battered him and swept him beyond screaming. The forms of 3 young men stood unsupported in air, and one of them began to glow, the form of the man in the street, brighter and brighter till it must have seared any living eyes to ash. Brighter, still, burning. A curled golden horn sped towards him, its cry pulling his soul, then flashed into a ring of golden light, swallowing him, chilling him, until the last fragment of him that recalled his name was sure his bones must splinter. A ruby-tipped dagger hurled straight at him, curved blades striking him between the eyes and sinking in until a gold-wrapped hilt, and all was gone. And he knew agony that washed away all thought that what had gone before was pain. He would have prayed to a creator he had long abandoned, if he remembered how. He would have shrieked, if he remembered how. If he remembered that humans shrieked, that he was human. On and on, more and more. And then he comes back to himself.
And it's like, what? What happened?
I have also seen 2001: A Space Odyssey, and I didn't like that scene either in that movie.
Right. There's a little bit of similarity of just like super surreal. I mean, a golden dagger flying at his head and sinking in, causing massive amounts of pain. What? Okay.
Lasting pain, too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's interesting with the ruby-tipped dagger. I'm like, what is that connection between Matt and the dagger and why? What? I don't get that.
Ruby tipped too, not ruby hilted. I don't know if that's just a different phrasing, but yeah,
I don't know.
It's the tip of the hilt.
Sure. It's interesting because it's the first time we've seen it referred to as ruby tipped instead of ruby hilted.
Yeah.
I just blew right past that.
I assume that it's nothing, that it's just the word he chose to use today.
Yeah.
Listen, it's not impossible in my opinion. It is highly unlikely that it means anything. But...
All I'm saying is it means the ruby in this one is on the end of the pommel, not in the middle of the crossguard.
Right.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. One thing I really wanted to ask you guys about, though, is this curled golden horn. Its cry pulling his soul. Why is the horn of Valir pulling on Carridin's soul? Does he have the potential? Is he actually like a hero who's been corrupted in his choices in this life? Or is there an inverse horn? Like,
I want that to be true. I would love it if if they got ahead of the game on that.
I think it's all just artifacts of the compulsion that Ishamael put on him. Like, these are the things that represent Matt. These are the essentials of Matt. And so by sort of imprinting Carridin with a version of Matt, like an alarm bell, he's saying, if you encounter this person who has these properties, it's going to set off an alarm bell that I can hear. And for some reason, Sammael hears it and shows up, not Moradin.
And I mean, Matt hadn't even connected himself to the horn when this vision was implanted. That's at the beginning of Book 2, and he doesn't blow the horn until the end of Book 2.
Well, that's true.
That is true.
I like what Fool of Life is saying in chat, that it just pulls men seeking glory, but
that would make sense.
Don't know why it would. Why?
Well, yeah, no, that might be a small little issue where, like, yeah, the vision probably shouldn't have the golden horn. All I can imagine is it's connected to the essence of Matt, and somehow retells Matt's story in a way that's.
Did Ishi know that they had the horn at this point? That they in general had the horn?
I don't think.
Because
the world, yeah.
Because Agenor and Balthamel pull all of it out of the eye, but I don't know if they look in afterwards. Because my thought is maybe he was like, hey, there's this guy, he definitely has this thing, he might have this thing. But yeah, it is strange.
I feel like the horn, in this case, the horn is very much connected to Matt in that he blew it type situation, not in the, he may have, like, touched it once. Like, it's just way too connected. Like, what are his defining characteristics, the horn and the dagger?
I'm not totally happy saying, well, Ishamael was able to plant a wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey adaptive weave into Borz's head, but also it's Ishamael in the early books, so maybe that works. I'd rather just say that he's a fallen or twisted hero of the horn, though. I like that headcanon better.
Well, and it's also a vision as constructed by Ishi, right? And if the thing that he cares about is we should get this horn thing is what we want, it would make sense that he would endow that with a particular sense of urgency, desirousness. It may not be connected to its actual existence as the horn and the wibbly-wobbly powers of the horn. It may be connected to, and of all these things, get this thing from that guy.
Whereas I see it as, like, I think he's just recognizing Matt's soul, and whatever that trigger is triggering Matt's soul, and then Carridin is essentially seeing the essence of Matt's soul, whatever it happens to be at this point. And at this point, the essence of Matt's soul is the corruption of the ruby dagger, the glory of the horn.
So you think that the weave is able to plant in Carridin's head whatever is relevant to Matt, regardless of what was relevant when the weave was planted?
Exactly.
It makes more sense, but I don't like it.
Little pattern skim.
Yeah, it's basically like scanning his thread and giving you like a quick flash of the important aspects of his thread, rather than like this is the vision that I'm showing you. It's just like the thread that I have cast this weave on has interacted with the thread I'm seeking, and therefore there's an interaction where
like a quantum entanglement
visions
kind of
exactly
thing.
this sort of like crossing of the streams, which we're going to see later. So there is that sort of vision that happens where the power taps into Matt's thread and gives Carridin a vision, and that vision triggers the alarm that Sammael sees.
We love a good resonance.
It's funny that Matt doesn't feel that happen at all. His thread being scanned by this evil weave. Maybe that's why the dice start.
Or if you want a computer analogy, think of it as like Carridin has a pointer to the soul that is Matt, and Sammael updates that on a regular basis, and so then when he taps into it, it's whatever the latest description is.
So then where's Sammael on that? Is he a hacker that's like also reading it?
I mean, I'm assuming that Sammael left his computer sitting around, open, and
his password was Darkfriend 5 ever.
Right, exactly. Darkfriend 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Right.
Nameless. It was probably nameless.
Yeah, for real.
Or Louis Theron sucks.
SUX.
Or it could just be that we know Mordin's back, and he gave Sammael. He's like, "Hey, we had a thing. Go check that out."
So we do think that Sammael shows up because of this thing being triggered, not by sheer coincidence.
That'd be a weird coincidence.
It would be a weird coincidence.
Wildly weird coincidence.
Because then he talks about the stuff about like, well, someone's keeping an eye on Ishi's old stuff.
But he is surprised at what the message is and what Carridin saw. He's not like, "Oh, I showed up because you saw Matt." All he was like, "I saw an alarm and I'm here now."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was an alert on my browser. What's going on?
The bat signal went off. Like,
yeah, I could see that. Maybe there's like some terangrial that like holds these sorts of things, and it was just sitting around, in the office, and it's like blinking, bing.
It's a voicemail.
Yeah, exactly.
But then again, we do know that ruminating. Can I at least hope it is about what you are here to find for me? It does kind of sound like Sammael checks in regularly, looking for. He's like, "Hey, what are the updates on the terangrial?" Reading this again, I'm like wondering, maybe it is just a coincidence.
I mean, Matt is within 100 yards of the situation, so
that's true.
There is a Taviran nearby,
and it's important in the way that things fall out that these plots not intersect, right? Like keeping Mili Skane out of the full loop. Like it falls out really effectively that way. So the pattern might have just been like, "Yes, Sammael, now is the time to go. Right now, do it impulsively." Because the pattern still affects the Forsaken. Like, for all that they're evil, the pattern is not good, right? The pattern is neither good nor evil, so it can affect the Forsaken if it needs to. Usually it doesn't, because it needs their agency to create chaos, but occasionally.
Yeah, reading through this again, I am more and more convinced that it was actually a coincidence. He was merely checking in to see on how the hunt for the terangrial was going, and happened to walk in right after the vision hit Carridin.
I'm happy to chalk that up to Matt.
I go back and forth. I'd love to hear opinions on that, because up until today, I've always assumed that the vision summoned Sammael, but now Sammael's really just checking in to be like, "Hey, any update on those Angreal that I have you looking for?"
Yeah, I think I misinterpreted. He mentioned something about Ishi's. I can't find the line right now, of course, but he mentioned something about a Sammael's old traps or Sammael's old such and such. But it's not for a while, and it's not until he brings it up. So I do wonder if it is coincidence. And that's the thing, because I didn't want it to be coincidence, because that is such a book thing to happen. We have a visit from Mili Skane, we have he's right outside, and we have the Forsaken popping in at random. That's the thing about it for me. The fact that it is so bizarre that it happens is what makes me think it is Matt luck to Viranness.
Mm-hmm. Walking coincidence.
So, and I think the reference to Sammael's commands being carried out is a reference to
killing his family.
Of course, right.
Yeah.
Sorry, I got my wires crossed.
I have no idea how that could have happened in this chapter.
No, it took me a second of reading to figure that one out. I was like, well, yeah, that is a line, and then you have to look at the context it's in.
I wonder maybe if the reason Sammael showed up is because of this meeting with Mili Skane. He wants to let Carridin know that, I've got your replacement picked out and your executioner like, fuck up one more time, and this child is going to take over. Which would, loop together two of the coincidences, at least. The Matt thing is still totally random, but hey, it's Matt. What do you expect?
It is weird. Well, again, it is Matt, so the fact that it happens at the same second does make sense, but only because it's Matt. Literally, the bloop, same time.
Post Dumai's Wells, which Sammael kind of had a hand in, like he's talking to the Aiel, the Shido, the Fool Boxes, and all that kind of stuff. So maybe he's a little worried, and he's like, I need an advantage against these Ashaman. Like, maybe I need, and that's why he's visiting, is like, I want objects of power, because now there's a bunch of men in the world channeling, and I need a leg up against them.
Or tools to arm them once I get them turned properly.
Sure.
Or both.
Or both. Why not both? And he freezes Cheyenne in a way that we basically never see happen anywhere else in the series, which is fun. Just some random immobilization waves that never show up again.
I think it's just compulsion.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's just a compulsion to stand still, don't move, don't think.
Don't remember.
Yeah, just stop. Okay, now start again.
Especially because we see Carridin forgets the vision right after it happens. And we already have that on the table. I mean, Moggy does that in book 4. So
yeah,
that is on the table.
No, that's fair. I wanted it to be complicated, but no, yeah, you're right. It's probably just literally like you will function at 100th the speed of normal time for the next 5 minutes and then remember nothing.
Because, like, it's not like the people outside stop the rest of the world. It's not like he's freezing time.
Yeah, no, it's just her. And she still is almost breathing, right? So
Right. And he still moves her hair and, like, plays with her a little bit. Like, she's not frozen in time.
Yeah, that's true. His blue eyes were colder than Winter's heart. Just in case you were wondering if winter's coming. Winter is coming!
Winter's heart, yes.
Did you know the weather's screwed up in the series?
Winter's Heart is actually a phrase that occurs a couple of times in the series before it's a
title and it's in one of the prophecies too, I think, or piece of poetry around Rand. But Jordan put that one in there deliberately. He didn't just like the phrase. Maybe he did just like the phrase, but he's dropping it repeatedly because he likes the phrase.
It's a good phrase.
'Tis.
I think there's a great analysis of Sammael here when Carridin says, whatever got in his way was brushed aside, trampled, or obliterated. Carridin knew Sammael would have turned his bowels to water if the man had just been someone met by chance. I think that kind of is why Sammael dies to Mashadar. He just kind of was like, no, you're not gonna, no, Mashadar's just not a problem for me.
Yeah.
And the arrogance of that is like, no, you can't just deal with Mashadar. Like, it is dangerous, and it does take him out.
I mean, he casually gates to Shadar Logoth in this chapter.
He does. I noticed that. That's his hub. Is like, I don't want anyone to follow me, so I'm gonna go through Shadar Logoth first, just to set,
Oh, really? That's where he goes?
It's gray columns and mist. I guess it could be Ilion if it's a really terrible weather day.
Why did I never think of that as being Shadar Logoth, like, ever in my life?
No, I looked at that and I was like, wait, gray columns and mist. And again, up until this read, I had never realized that, but I absolutely looked at it, and yeah.
Damn.
The Watt Encyclopedia agrees with me. Most likely, Shadar Logoth.
He's such an idiot. How stupid can you be? Oh my god. Does that have something to do with why Leah vanished?
Oh man, Leah.
Is she a Darkfriend? Was she feeding information to Sammael? Did she lag behind to make contact with him in Shadar Logoth? And because he did say he had someone close to Rand, what if that was Leah? We also have Maiden Darkfriend set up before with Matt's girlfriend. She didn't just disappear. She actually lagged behind because she was going to meet Sammael, give him some information. And that's why she snuck away and wasn't responding to everyone calling her name. She wasn't dead or injured. She was hiding. And
then he left her behind in Shadar Logoth to make her way because she was useless now and discarded. It's just, her disappearance is so weird. And if he's making his base of operations in Shadar Logoth,
It is always, it's one of those moments that feels really plotty. So this, I mean, I can see it.
I can see it too, and I hate it, love it.
That she's a Darkfriend who was
dropped back to talk with Sammael and then gets left behind to actually make her own way in Shadar Logoth. Like, because there's no way that was deliberately done to hurt Rand. Like, hurting Rand was an incidental side effect of this plot, but it makes more sense than she decided to wander off on her own to look at a cool rock.
She wandered off on her own to talk to a Forsaken.
Wow.
I'm into it.
And I will
Print it.
It's not my own idea. Definitely came across it while I was researching this chapter, but I liked it. I liked it a lot.
My brain is so blown right now.
I love it when you do that little sideways look. You're like, wait, that means. Like, okay, pause. Let the gears turn.
Pieces are falling into place.
This is why I love this podcast. I never would have thought to put these things together if I wasn't trying to talk it out chapter by chapter. I would just read past it and be like, yep, I know what's happening here. Moving on.
DK Moon also points out, and I like this, that, and this is a reference back, that Matt has been severed from the Horn. He's been bale-fired and resurrected, so he should his thread should no longer have a direct connection to the Horn. He's not linked to it.
Well, unless that protocol hasn't been updated since then. Like you were saying, it's like it has to get updated. Like if no one hit the refresh button, then that's what's still in the cache.
Google hasn't scanned that webpage again.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
I'm glad that we've just decided that it's all a simulation.
There is no spoon.
It makes sense. Balefire is just it's just Control Z.
Life is a dream, which we all shall wake.
Mm-hmm.
The ideal
Archive that.
Yep.
Very much so. And then we have this really hilarious juxtaposition of, I hate people who use the power because mortals shouldn't do that. Therefore, the Forsaken are not mortal because I respect them and they use the power.
Motivated reasoning.
Yeah. It's like that. No, that does not. No, but fine, whatever.
Very easy to convince yourself that two opposing ideas are true if you really want them to be.
Yeah.
Very easy to do.
Our minds are powerful things.
Yep.
And he's like, I'm gonna be immortal, and it's like, you don't even channel, bro. Like, what are you gonna do to get elevated to Forsaken status?
He's gonna withhold alcohol for a while. It's his big struggle this chapter.
Oh, he'll have enough soon enough. That's
the thing. I love that. I didn't. How could you think him the first time? But this time we go, oh, I'm thirsty. I'm thirsty. I'm thirsty. I'm thirsty.
I think
hang in there.
Jacob's had enough brandy.
Alcoholic white cloaks is a theme, that's for sure.
It is.
We got Bornhold.
Yeah.
That becomes has a problem.
It's almost
with
like being a small-minded, hateful person is really bad for your emotions, and you need to numb them.
I don't know what you're talking about, but I need to get another cider.
I mean, in fairness, Bornhold is also dealing with, the death of
He's
his
got
father.
a lot of trauma he's
so,
working through.
It's not just because he's a small-minded douchebag, but yeah. The White Cloaks really think that they deserve to kick back with some alcohol at the end of the day of torturing people. And yeah, then Sammael debates if he wants Matt killed or not and decides it's not worth it at the moment.
When he says it's going to draw attention, I think he's talking about other Forsaken. I really do think he's trying to hide his search for Angreal from the other Forsaken, and he doesn't want the death. If Matt dies, well, that's a big news. All the Forsaken hear about it. Where did Matt die? Ebou Dar. Why are you in Ebou Dar? What are you doing in Ebou Dar?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you're looking for Angreal? We're looking too. And all of a sudden it becomes a competition. Because the Forsaken are competing as much with each other as they are with the Dragon Reborn.
Yeah.
I would say more. I would say they're competing with each other more. Rand gets in the way.
Yeah, they're competing to see who will ultimately compete with Rand.
Yeah, they're in the primary right now. They're primarying each other.
And they see themselves as the people playing the game, not as the pieces on the board.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, with Ishii, I mean, I'm trying to remember exactly how in it Moradin is right now.
Moradin gets his he's the Watcher.
Yeah.
And then he gets his first
stuff out.
Yeah, and he gets his first real appearance when Rand fights Sammael at the end of this book and rescues him in Shadar Logoth.
Yeah, at the end, yeah.
So he's out and getting his bearings at this point?
So he's manipulating things. He's popping in, he's watching folks, he's giving out orders. Like, at this point, I firmly believe that Moradin was reborn at the same time as Agenor and Bethalmel. As Osagar and Arangar.
Yeah.
That,
the Darkfriends did a batch process of soul transmigration.
Yeah. And so he's been around, and we saw them at the beginning of this book in the prologue.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm assuming he was also around at a similar time and has been sort of watching and catching back up on the time that he missed.
So going back to the Forsaken feeling like they're the manipulators, with no Moradin in the picture, they do have fair reason to believe that.
Right. They're first among
equals.
Their
their link up there, their connection with overseeing power is at a minimum right now. Shadar Haran is kind of there if you're in the Pit of Doom.
He's establishing himself. Yeah, I really do feel like the last sort of, from the end of Dragon Reborn to this book, there's been a real sort of dispersal of authority in the Forsaken. That, like, it really was all on a Sammael in the beginning. But now everyone's kind of gone their own way.
Yeah.
Until Moradin shows up and is like, okay, folks, wrap it up. Like, this is not going well. We've got things to do. This has been fun. I'm taking control over again. I think what he's doing now is observing and being like, okay, let's see how you guys have been doing in my absence. Demandred, doing just fine. Semirog, doing just fine. Right? Like, you guys are on track. You have your armies. You've got, you're causing chaos. Way to go. Magedian, we need to have a little bit of a conversation.
A little course correction there.
A little course correction, yeah. We need to maybe...
I think you've strayed a bit.
Yeah. So we're going to go ahead and take out your soul and put it over here. And, yeah, let's try again.
Lanfear, I'll come back later.
Yeah, well, you'll keep. You're in a different dimension. We'll get to you in a minute.
We'll talk.
Do you think she's dead yet?
I'm trying to remember what Moiraine says.
It just happens somewhere in the middle.
Somewhere in the middle. I don't think so. I think he probably, he's not merciful. I don't think he has good reason to save her right off the bat. But I don't know. I mean, if you wanted to keep them from siphoning off too much of her ability, I guess that's really the only metric we could use is how far down does Moiraine go in power?
Right.
How far down does Lanfear go in power?
I think Lanfear goes down to like normal for this age Aes Sedai. Like probably like where Moiraine was, kind of.
Yeah.
But yeah, I could see her being like the last one to get dealt with, given that she's in an alternate dimension. Like she's the least able to like get out ahead of him catching up.
Well, and Moradin has to be resurrected. He has to figure some shit out. Then he has to kill her.
Yeah, there's a lot of
make
steps
that decision.
there.
There's a lot of steps there, and so I'm assuming he hasn't quite done that yet.
Yeah, because Moiraine just says like it happens at some point, but it's well between the beginning and the end of her time there. So
later, I'll check the companion, and I'll just because I think you could do the math of levels if you assume a constant decrease and figure out proportionally how long Moiraine was in there versus how long Lanfear was
discovered the function by which they are drawing that down.
Yeah. Assume a constant rate of draining power.
Right.
And Lanfear has 35 watermelons. How many watermelons?
Assume a frictionless dimension.
Assume a spherical dark one. Actually, that does kind of work for the black hole that he becomes that changes time and space.
I'm pretty sure the dark one is a perfect sphere with no area. The dark one is a singularity.
I mean, yeah.
What's the Schwarzschild radius of the dark one? That's my question.
Oh, we're above my pay grade now.
I'm just wondering, like, if the event horizon looks different. No.
Is the dark one a rotating black hole, or
what was the thing? There was they took pictures of a black hole a couple years ago. There was the dark one. That one.
Yeah.
He's that one.
Yeah. I have a necklace made with that picture on it that was given to me as a graduation present by one of my really nerdy friends.
That's beautiful.
Well, and I imagine, right, because there's a black hole at the center of every galaxy.
Or more than one.
Or more than one. Yeah, well, I imagine they would combine if there were two.
It takes a while, but yeah. Like, we have, like, a super massive one because they've combined and, yeah.
All that jazz. So I imagine, like, that's different, parallel universes, just, like, spaced out. You go to a different galaxy, you have a different dark one at the center, but it's all the same dark one.
Oh, I love that. Oh, that's fun. And that's what the portal stones do.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah. The next thing I have is sort of skimming over this whole Myrddraal or disgusting situation.
Yes, women do suffer worse than men from the attentions of Myrddraal.
But even Myrddraal must find their pleasures somewhere. No, they don't. I'm sorry. No, Myrddraal will be Myrddraal is not an acceptable excuse.
That's this book. This book has the most of those, I feel like.
Just in case you were wondering if Myrddraal rape, they do.
Yeah.
Which does set us up for Shadar Haran and Moghedien, who is currently being raped by Shadar Haran at this very moment.
Yeah. I do appreciate that Jordan has the majority of the rapes be from either literal evil incarnate or their minions, but it's also just like, did you have to make them, like, sadistic on top of evil? Ew!
We're already chopping up children.
I know.
Can we leave it at chopping up children?
It's just...
Because that's better?
It's all bad.
And then she's smiling on a spit because she's not being raped anymore. It's like, wow. You just, like, he's making my imagination work overtime in the worst ways, you know? I don't appreciate that. I mean, I do because I keep reading the series, but like,
So he says, don't make me grow impatient. Track these down. Like, I've tasked you with this. Like, you mess up, I will kill you, which we do see later with the brandy.
And then he has a very reasonable counterpoint. But there's eyes to die. How am I supposed to... I'm a white cloak. How am I supposed to beat the eyes to die at finding eyes to die toys? And then he says, I have someone for that. There's an app for that.
I've got a golem. There's a golem for that.
Funny you should ask.
Because I just sent the golem to kill...
Herod fell?
Well, yes, but also Asmodean. Right, so I guess you weren't here for this. Theory is that Sammael believed that Herod Fell was Asmodean in disguise. That's why Rand was...
Oh, that makes so much sense.
And that
makes so much sense.
And that's why he sent the golem after him, because he wanted to take down a channeler with the golem. And that's where the golem has been.
Right. So he thinks that he just used the golem to take out one of the other...
Asmodean.
Yeah, another channeler. But no, he didn't. He just took out a really smart, crazy person.
Just a nice old man.
Just a nice old man who likes to dance with 3 young women.
He's basically Rand. I mean, he's like, you would do really well as a scholar. Also, you'd do really well as the, fourth.
He's who Rand might have been.
I mean, let's be honest. The only 2 men we see with 3 women at a time are Rand and Herod Fell.
And that's probably going to be what Rand, becomes in his
Right.
second career. He's going to go, be the weird old man in the library.
I imagine him hanging out with...
Adrian Tarson?
Yeah. Yes, I imagine he's going to go, work for Adrian. And,
totally.
Experiment with various
he's going to be like, I just want to work in the lab, no worries.
Yeah, totally.
Good to meet you. It would like to get to know you better. It would. I am it. Hello. Don't worry.
Yeah, totally.
My name's Randall. Oh, die.
I'm rather happy to be here.
And so all of Carridin's family's dead. And the only reason the Myrtle haven't come after him is because Sammael is saying, no, I still need him.
Yeah. And then we get another description of how awful Myrddraal are, because one wasn't enough for this chapter.
That's Sammy.
It's a horrible story about having this man beg to have everything important taken away in the most painful way possible until there was a small scrap of something left to throw to the Trollocs.
Yeah.
It's so nasty! It's a really good story in terms of being no, really. You thought that raping women for fun was bad.
I'll do ya. Another one.
You wouldn't believe the sounds it made. That line has stuck with me for a long time.
The way Kramer delivers it leaves no room for doubt what that means. It was a game with them. Oh, it's so nasty. They're so evil.
Myrddraal are the worst. The worst.
Yeah.
Is it Shadar Haran himself who's taking out Carridin's family?
Well, it starts in book 2, right?
And I think that Myrddraal smiles at him. And the only Myrddraal that smiles is Shadar Haran.
Yeah, I mean, Shadar Haran, for all we know, has been around since book 1, right? Because there's a Myrddraal, when Rand spills milk everywhere, the Myrddraal smiles at him in Baerlon.
Yeah.
So, totally possible.
Right, because he can't leave Shadar Logoth he can't leave Shale Ghul for very long, but they have fast travel anywhere that there's shadows. So, I can see that. I never really thought of him as being there so early, but...
Or it's an eye of the worldism, but I like it.
I like it too. I do think that some of his family was killed by more benign or more run-of-the-mill shadow spawn, because there's a lot of family to kill off. Shadar Haran doesn't have to attend every single one, but
he wants to.
It's true.
What else are you gonna do when you're aboard?
You're aboard Fade.
There's a lull in the family murder, I think. I remember one of the more recent times we hear from him, he's like, it's been a hot minute since anyone's been abducted or murdered.
Yeah.
Ha ha! Which I always ascribed to Ishi vanishing and someone else kind of taking over his lead.
That's sort of what I thought too, yeah.
It's interesting that we've stepped it back up now. Someone's like, well, it worked last time.
Yeah, let's just get back to that.
He's got cousins left.
Yeah.
Pick up on that thread.
Yeah.
I like also that he follows this up by going, well, I'm not a coward at all. Keep killing my family.
Yeah, it's like, that's actually the definition of a coward, is saying I have another sister. Please don't kill me.
At that point, he's like starting to like adopt children.
Right.
I have another child. Take them out.
Our podcast, we were joking, where he goes like, give me 9 months, I'll find you another one. We'll just keep it rolling.
Yeah.
Which is also horrible, by the way. Anyway.
And then Cheyenne snaps back into presence.
I wanted to go over the vertical line of light in the air before the Chosen. It seemed to turn in some fashion into a hole. Like, so he opens a gateway, and he goes through somewhere full of gray columns and thick mist. And like, yeah, unless that's Ilion at night on a misty night, which is possible, but it certainly
without any seagulls.
Yeah, certainly sounds like Shadar Haran to me.
Shadar Logoth.
Yes.
I always thought that it was some sort of like dreamy thing, like how Lanfear does. Like she just steps into like a dream space of like white pillars and fluffy tapestries, or like how Grandal has like a special like room deep inside her palace that's like all more Forsaken-y and Age of Legends-y. But Sammael doesn't seem the kind to have that sort of like effort to be put out for fancy trappings and stuff. Like Shadar Logoth makes way more sense for his style.
I mean, it's the thick gray mist for me. It's heavy mists for me. Just speaks you're either in some bog that we've never seen, or you're in Shadar Logoth.
Can't believe I never thought of that. I'm just like, he's just ripping off Lanfear. But like, Sammael doesn't rip off Lanfear. That's not his jam.
But it makes sense to me that he would always travel through Shadar Logoth to try and prevent anyone from following him.
Mm-hmm. Because if anyone does happen to follow him, like, good luck getting out again. Because he can just like jump in, jump out. But if anyone were to like throw themselves through the gateway after him, like they're gonna be they're gonna be stuck. And then it means that he has really easy access to jumping there whenever he needs to get away from anyone or lead anyone. Like, I don't know, Rand. Like, it's just right up there in his like most recently used weaves.
Yeah. It's like a default destination when you're being attacked is just like, oh, let me run away to this place that like is dangerous for anyone who follows me.
Got a hotkey.
Yeah. Exactly. But it seems really dumb, because what if his gateway opens up in a spot where Mashadar is right then?
Yeah.
I mean, are we saying that Sammael is a brain trust?
It's just...
So here's my other question. Isn't it daytime?
Seems like it.
Well, fog can block the sun pretty effectively.
Not in Shadar Logoth.
Oh, right. Well, how far away are they? This is mid-morning in Ebou Dar. Shadar Logoth is not that far away. It's not half a world away.
No.
It just says there's mist. It doesn't say that it's dark necessarily.
Oh, and it can be inside the buildings, can't it?
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. I thought during the day there was no mist and it was just the eyes in Shadar Logoth.
It's underground. Those palaces probably had basements. But that still seems really dumb.
Is it morning? I'm trying to remember what's happening right before this, because if it's still early...
Matt was at the
Silver Circuit.
The Silver Circuit watching the horse race, and that doesn't happen. That happened like midday, maybe.
No, that happens midday.
It's got to be
no, that's weird.
Yeah.
So like it can't be nighttime, right? It can't be anywhere close to nighttime. So Ilion's on the sea, right? Why not be misty?
Well, gray columns, though. I mean, I'm trying to think how else we have seen him gate to Ilion before, and I feel like it's usually described as white columns with the sound of seagulls.
Yeah. Maybe he is using some random space in Talaran Riyadh. Seems overly elaborate, but... Or maybe Jordan forgot about time zones. I mean, I know we do in the community occasionally forget about time zones. So...
Not the cycles of the moon, though. That he's got on lock, but everything else.
And nowhere gets described with gray columns. Like, at all. Ebou Dar is white. Tyr is red.
All I'll say is the Watt Encyclopedia believes that it is Shadar Logoth.
Well... We'll just assume that makes sense.
Makes sense, yeah. But the hour of the day really confuses me, because I didn't think there was any mist in Shadar Logoth during the day, generally.
No, I do think you're right.
I'm going to go with the basement, and it's just underground, and he's choosing to use a basement underground.
He's got a den. It's nice, He's got his Xbox, got a mini fridge full of chilled wine.
Maybe he's got a little ward around where he puts the gateway to make sure that Shadar Logoth is never in that spot.
That would make sense.
Yeah. Words with Shadar in them. Christ. Mashadar.
This is his man cave,
His Sam cave.
Sam cave.
It's my one dad joke for the month that I'm going to manage to get off with good timing.
That's a good one.
So yeah, then Cheyenne has a moment where she comes back and he's in a different spot, and she probably ascribes some like supernatural powers to him, making the mystique of the great dark organization like more mystique-y, because he just like snapped from one spot to another. Like, is he a vampire? Can he channel? Was he just tapped on the shoulder by a Forsaken? What is happening? I'm so in awe. Also, I'm going to kill him with brandy shortly.
And he overpowers her physically, which is he very much feels out of control, and so he has to put himself in control through physical overpowering of this woman in his presence.
Yeah, she starts to challenge him, and he's not having any of it. He has no patience. He's feeling backed into a corner, and yeah, he's going to exert power and control and violence on the nearest person to him. You know, I think he does that with his servant later.
And earlier. He does it in book 3 too.
Yeah, that's just his entire style is like, I'm feeling stressed. Who can I hurt? Which is, you know, not an unknown pattern in human psychology.
Yeah, it has been known to happen.
But he redirects Cheyenne because of the information he got. He was telling her to do one thing. She blinks. He's in a different part of the room, and now he's telling her to do something else. Like, she's got to be really confused about what's happening in this whole interview.
So, and this is exactly the opposite of what Sammael told him to do. Sammael told him, ignore Matt Cawthon, he's not important, go find the Tarangreal. And instead, he immediately does a 180. Not a 360 like this episode, but a 180. and tells her, no, ignore that, ignore everything we've been telling you to do, and find Matt Cawthon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Why?
I think it has to be compulsion. I think it has to be he still has that feeling like something's going to his forehead, right? He says it again. I think that no matter what is said to him in idle conversation by Sammy or anybody else, there's a dream dagger in his brain saying, no, get the kid.
And he keeps thinking about how no one survives disobeying one of the chosen. It's this like repetitive thought that doesn't come up until that vision happens to him, which does suggest that he's basically got conflicting oaths going on, except that one of the oaths is not magically binding, so he's not suffocating or spontaneously combusting. He's just having a migraine.
But his oaths are, I mean, one oath is to the White Cloaks, and the other, I mean, he's got like 3 competing oaths. He's got his oath to the White Cloaks, he's got his pledge to Sammael, and then he has the compulsion from Sammael in his head.
Yeah, at this point, I think Pedro Nile has become completely like pushed off the list, like, because now it's just like, well, I'm dying one way or another. Pedro Nile's not even gonna have a chance to like get in line, bro. Like, take a number. So many people are coming to kill me. But yeah, I agree. Like, no one survived disobeying the chosen. His head felt tight to bursting. Like, yeah, his brain is probably like eating itself alive, trying to like make this work.
He's being forced by compulsion to disobey one of the chosen, and that terrifies him.
And then him and Mili Skane almost have a cool chance to catch up about how cool Matt is, but that doesn't last very long.
We call her an insect, and
smash the ant.
I'm going to drive this metaphor home now.
Right.
I like the randomness of catching the ant by the leg and watching it struggle.
I'm like, ants are small. Like, that's a...
Well, it depends on the ant, right?
Oh, that's
I've
fair.
seen Ant-Man. I know 3 different kinds of ants.
I've lived in Texas. I've seen big ants.
Yeah, well, I mean, even, the difference between a sugar ant and a carpenter ant is pretty real. But maybe it's just because Matt's there, and so like coincidence and randomness, right? Like, even the tip of the dagger is gonna like stab a poor little ant in the leg.
I feel like you just cut the ant's leg off.
Yeah, it would just rip off and
to...
like pop out or something, and then bite. And also, like, this scene always reminds me of that one scene in Hunchback of Notre Dame. Asshole fuckface like pulls up the stone and there's a bunch of bugs under it, and then he like smashes the stone back down and like grinds it onto the bugs. This always reminds me of that. It's that same like energy.
Been a while since I've seen that one.
It's a
good one. I remember that much. Just been a long time.
Yeah, I had a really weird compulsion to hear the soundtrack of it like 7 or 8 months ago, and so I watched it again and was like, now I have these songs stuck in my head for the next month. This is fine. And even in that scene, I think he crushes some of the bugs like under his fingers.
Yeah, he does that. He puts it in place, and he's like, don't mess up, and then he just uses his finger or his thumb to just squish it down, ruins his letter, and gets bug guts all over his finger.
Yeah.
Which, I guess when you're a dark friend, you've done worse things, and you can handle worse things. But I wouldn't want to do that. Dude, use a napkin, put it outside or something.
Yeah, my husband and I are really good about taking bugs and putting them outside, with the exception of ants. He has a to the death hatred of ants that is like, no, we will kill them. We will kill them right now. We will kill them completely.
There's something to do with pheromones in ants. And it's either if you kill an ant, another ant will come to retrieve its body, or if you kill an ant, it gives off a pheromone which is like, do not come in here. And I don't remember which one it is, which is a shame, because one of them is a very useful life hack, and the other one is how you get ants, or more ants. It depends on the kind of ants.
I want to say I remember reading a thing about if they're injured, like in battle with other ants, they'll give off like death pheromones to be like, don't bother taking me home. And then, of course, there's the thing where they get infected with mushrooms and like...
Oh, I can't even think about that.
Oh, yeah.
I hate that
we're not
much.
talking about that. But
it's okay.
I do want to say that I've seen a thing about how they give off I'm dead pheromones even when they're only injured in an effort to like preserve the resources of the...
Yeah, keep the other ants from dying too.
Yeah, which is, altruistic in as much as hive creatures can be altruistic.
And very unlike Darkfriends.
Very unlike Darkfriends. They're like, I'm dead. Please come back and help me.
Things are going poorly. Maybe a Forsaken will help. Or just kill me.
Yes, quite. But Mili Skane is very impressed by this big, tall dark friend threatening her with knives and ant executions, and calls him master, which is apparently a real power trip for him, because ew.
Because, yes, I'm finally like old Cully.
Yeah, exactly. Like...
I've finally risen to the level of this beggar.
Oh, the toothless, dirty old beggar.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
Crusty old man.
Yeah. Yeah, I also think that why he sends Mili off to get Matt is because he can justify doing multiple things at once, right? He can send multiple circles to do one thing and then still himself do another task, and then he's technically still doing both things. Like the letter of the oath.
True, yeah.
Because he's only compelled for one thing. The other one is just a matter of survival that he's choosing. So maybe that's why he's disobeying Sammael. Is he's like, well, I'll do the one thing, and I'll make everyone else do the other thing. Deal? Deal.
Sensible enough.
And that's the end of the chapter.
That is. It's a nice, short chapter.
It really is.
Yeah, but dense. I highlighted a lot of this chapter. There was very little wasted space.
Yeah. Well, like you guys were saying before, it's a really good example of Jordan's writing in this chapter. It's just, yeah, if you were going to be like, here's a chapter that stands alone, this is one of those, for sure. You could almost put this out there without any context, and a random person could pick it up, read it, and be like, I'm really concerned for this Matt Cawthon character now.
Good insight into dark friendery. Good insight into dark friend Forsaken relations.
I always
just like it.
Yeah, I always really like how it lets you see the telescoping nature of how like the immortal evil people and like the tiny little peons like Mili like actually interact, and like the way that it looks to each person along that tier. Because to Mili Skane, this is a very mysterious, confusing event. To us, we know what's going on. It all makes sense to us, but from where she's sitting, like, she didn't know it was going to be the end of the world when she signed up for this, right? She's probably kind of like Shiriam, like, I just want to do this because it would be fun.
Yeah.
And then this weird, mysterious stuff happens. She doesn't have any idea that there's a Forsaken, like, intimately aware of what she's doing at all.
It's very much the same energy that the Dark Friends social has, where Baalsman shows up and everyone just drops. It's a world they don't know they live in. Right?
Yeah.
I feel like even at the end of the books, if I'm remembering correctly, there are people who are like, "What do you mean the dragon is reborn?" And I'm like, "Dude, where have you been for the past 13 novels?"
Yeah, but the world's big.
Oh, you've been here on your farm.
The world is huge.
Yeah.
Gus, thank you so much. That was really fun having you on.
It was my pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Super easy having you. Like, I think that'll be like one of the least edited episodes that I do. Like, I think that was just very smooth and went very well. So that was fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And for the audience's sake, I'm gonna say part of the reason why Gus is on this chapter is because I've already invited him back for that chapter.
Yes.
So I wanted you all to get a chance to hear his voice and hear how awesome he is before we get into that chapter.
Should be fun.
Yeah, that's going to be fun.
Aradia, am I on that chapter? Am I in that chapter?
I believe you forcibly took yourself off of that chapter
I
before I
believe I
had
did.
an opinion. So, which is fine.
I really don't want to talk about that chapter.
Yeah, I have been planning on handling that one on my own
Excellent,
with,
yeah.
with Gus. So yes,
Is it just you and Gus? Or,
Yeah,
or did you?
I haven't thought of bringing anyone else on because I think there's enough to go into. Plus, Gus and I have a bit of rapport behind the scenes about how that chapter goes. So yeah, we'll get through it. So I'm really glad that you were able to come and enjoy a more fun chapter before we get into that sticky terrain.
I'm really glad I got to be here. So thank you again for having me. You know, I have to confess, I'm actually, in the grand scheme of things, I'm a baby fan. I picked up Eye of the World shortly after Memory of Light came out, so that experience of waiting, I never had it. The wait for me was how long until I can get to the bookstore, how long until I can get the next book in my hands.
Right.
But then again, as you say, you know, I would be curious about stuff and would want to Google things and would have to restrain myself, but after the fact, would look on forums and go like, oh yeah, we knew that. We knew about, well, I don't think anyone knew about Asmodean, but we knew about all these things. How? It's fun to get a view of that again now.
And you've only been through it once, right?
Yeah.
So you're really on, like, it's in many ways it's like a first read. The first reread is just a whole thing.
It's been a fun journey for me. You know, I mean, I try to focus all the energy on her and her journey, but I make a point to drop as many subtle things as I can without giving them away. That I just realized this is foreshadowing, but I'm not allowed to say so. Lots of fun.
I was gonna say, it's how much of reading through a second time, for the first time, first reread, how unique of an how many things are you realizing? How much different is this read for you than the first time through in terms of like discovering new things and seeing foreshadowing and things like that?
Well, I mean, I think it's one of the most common things people say about a first reread is, look at how much foreshadowing you can fit in this bad boy right here, and it's any chapter, it's every book. The degree to which it's blatant at times and the pure repetitiveness of it just shines through, though, is it's shocking. And for instance, the number of times Rand says something about my left hand, or in the chapter we're talking about today, Bors is really thirsty, over and over and over and over again. And I go like, oh, you son of a gun. How could you do that to me? It's really a masterclass as someone who is in entertainment and in like media programming like this. It's a masterclass in how to do it just the right amount. Because I feel like if it were more, it would be too much. And if it were less, it would be you wouldn't feel it.
Right. He also has a massive volume of words to hide his foreshadowing in. Like, that's one of the things that you can't necessarily do until you have several 100,000 words.
Absolutely.
Is to put like repetitive statements and still be able to hide that.
It reminds me in a lot of ways of as he described it, I think, as sort of trying to make an American mythos, an American myth epic. It reminds me in a lot of ways of Greek classics when they would have those things they would jump to, and I mean, obviously in those cases it's for the narrator, it's for the bard to know I got to touch base here, but it almost feels sometimes like he's channeling that sort of thing. You know, Wine Dark Sea, Rand in his hand, Egwene's gonna be Amerlin one day, over and over.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is epic storytelling in a way that, you know, goes back to the Iliad and the Odyssey, goes back to this sort of journey of one character over time, having lots of experiences and lots of encounters, many of which are completely unrealistic, but tell a story or a moral. You go back and look at those, like, yeah, I can see where there's the Greek Iliad and the Odyssey, the thing, all the Greek gods, and all those sorts of stories, and how Jordan's trying to retell that from an American perspective, and all the various people that ended up in our...
And there's enough content there to, like, keep you going forever. Like, if the world ends and all the books are burned and all the audio files are wiped, like, I could basically recite the Wheel of Time to keep people going and just be a new Homer. Like, I could do that at this point. I've memorized the series well enough.
Yeah, and it is a cycle.
If you've ever read Fahrenheit 451,
yeah,
right, that's what it's all about. Everyone becomes a book. And ever since I read Fahrenheit 51, my goal was always to become the Wheel of Time.
That is a beautiful goal.
Turns out I'm terrible at actually memorizing those sorts of things, so I just didn't analyze it and look things up, and I'd be screwed if it weren't for reference material. But I do remember reading Fahrenheit 451 and being like, what book would I pick? And it was always the Wheel of Time.
Get a few friends together, you could divvy them up, it'll be even easier. Make it a traveling troupe.
Basically. Like players.
Well, I imagine after the apocalypse, the Wheel of Time community will come together and band together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They'll say, hey, everyone, we're approaching the second age. Let's go.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
If you ascribe to the theory that this is the first age, which I know not everyone does.
Well, they're wrong, so.
Pretty blatant.
I found one of the best fanfics ever, and I've never been able to find it again since, but it started out with the city-state of Arizona having a genetic lab that they were experimenting in, and they have these subjects called Adam and Eve who work out how to channel, and they break out, and Adam gets killed, but Eve goes on.
Oh, that's
and I was
great.
just like, this is amazing. And every time I've looked for it on the internet since, I haven't been able to find it. And I keep telling the story in the hopes that someone will tell me where that is, because it was just such a great, like, apocalypse into origin story, like, point. And so, yeah, I'm just like, this is the first age, and we are so about to switch to the second age. Come on, channeling.
I feel like there's a lot of that sort of half-remembered fanfic out there. There was a website I found once that had just links and links of satirical, parodic pieces about the Wheel of Time. Like there was one that compared sex scenes in Wheel of Time to sex scenes in Song of Ice and Fire, you know, and it was written from the in-world perspective of the characters. There were synopses of the books as written by like allegedly Robert Jordan, going like, and then this, I don't know, whatever, then this happens for some reason. I have asked on Reddit, I have asked on Discords, I have looked on every site I can find. Nobody knows what I'm talking about. I may have made it up in my head, I don't remember. It's gone.
Yeah, the internet has really become a place of broken links.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of sad how much of the old internet is gone and replaced by Google, Facebook, Instagram, those sorts of folks. I miss the old days of blogs.
We are on episode 360. Like,
that's right.
That seems like a significant number because
Wow.
geometry.
Because we've done a full 360.
Yeah.
We're right back where we started.
Except
That's a wheel.
Not really, because...
Let's talk about dragon mounts, everybody.
Yeah,
No,
right.
No.
Let's go back. Forward and back.
Yeah, so today we're doing the prologue to Eye of the World. Actually, I think we were going to start with Ravens, right? Because that's now where the series starts.
That's what everyone wants to hear.
Yeah, totally. Ravens,
Yeah.
People are clamoring for more Ravens. I mean,
Yeah,
really,
yeah.
Egwene as a teenager is just the most palatable. Like, of all the things that I wanted a prequel, I wanted Egwene as a teenager. Not Tam.
Isn't she like 9 or something?
That sounds right.
Oh, yeah, maybe a preteen. That's entirely possible.
It's like
Yeah.
she's so just like...
I'll confess, it's actually the one piece of Wheel of Time canon that I have not read, because people told me, why would you bother?
Yeah, you're
Maybe I will
missing
someday.
nothing.
Yeah. Doesn't she just look at people and think about them, and then there's a bird?
She also spoils a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, and
Oh, good.
Tam
Great.
gives you a nice truncated version of the prologue and is like, the dragon is a historical figure with importance to the world, children. Now go back to your chores. And the children are like, wow! And then there's a raven. It's like...
And the Raven acts weird, which is especially weird considering how many years it is before Eye of the World. It's like, wait, if the Raven was acting...
Yeah, it's
I mean,
not
if the
even
Raven's
the
just-
summer that Pod and Fane got
Right.
distilled the first time. It's just ridiculous. All of it's ridiculous. So
Good fun.
The cadence doesn't read like a Robert Jordan writing. It reads like an editor wrote it or extremely heavily edited it.
It sounds like Robert Jordan tried to write YA.
Yeah.
But he just wrote an adult talking to children, which is not YA.
No.
That's parent A. That's YA, by the way, being young audience. Yeah, everyone knows that.
Yeah, and then it's just like it's Egwene, but really simplified. It's still the same bullheaded I'm gonna be the best, but just with a 9-year-old's eloquence, and it's just like
Yeah, the every once in a while I get this Cat Lord of Chaos says here, maybe Harriet wrote it, and every once in a while I hear that from somebody. And I'll be honest, the more I got to know Harriet, the less I think she ever wrote anything. That woman is an editor to the core, and she cuts. She doesn't write. She doesn't put things down on paper. She cuts.
She's got that I saw the angel in the stone and carved to set it free kind of energy.
Exactly.
Ooh,
exactly.
okay.
Yeah.
I love that quote.
So, that's...
She did the titles, too, didn't she? The chapter titles? I think I heard somewhere that she came up with the chapter.
Rings a bell?
Talking out of my ass here.
I mean,
very
it's
bell.
entirely possible that I'm not
That
correct.
is an editor's job, right?
Yes,
So
yes.
I would not be surprised that's an editor often comes up with chapter titles, right? Like, great. So every time we sat down and talked about a chapter title, we're really discussing why Harriet named it that way. That would be an interesting thing. Yeah.
Yeah, some of them are more inspired than others, but there's a lot of chapters to name, so.
Right.
There's a lot of leave takings. So that's good.
I love that is the title of one of the episodes.
Oh, right. I forgot about that. And there will be one every season.
Yeah. There should be.
It's a nice little bookend, kind of, or
It is.
whatever.
It is. I wonder if there's any leave takings in this. I don't think we've seen any in this one.
Well, there aren't really any leave takings in this book. There's a lot of comings and goings, but no real leave takings.
Gateways make it hard to actually, leave somewhere permanently.
That's true. You go and the journey's over. Good job, everybody.
Yeah, I really get away from that issue in fantasy where it's and then horse stuff, and then camping stuff.
Right.
It's no, let's fast travel. Let's get past that, which is nice.
It's good that we leave room for Bella, though.
Yes, the creator has to be given all due respect.
That's when you're at a dance and they say, remember, make sure to leave room for Bella.
The side hug.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?